Here are some of the stories of Barbara Maud Breckles. She is a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother.
Was when I was 8 years old, I was picked for a poster for the war.
Oh.
And they made a poster and it was on telephone poles and all that. And I'm praying. My hands are like this and my dress is torn.
Oh.
But that's what they wanted.
Oh, okay.
And my parents got $500 for that.
Wow.
I didn't get anything. They got the money.
That's a lot of money back
then.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in Montreal?
I was brought up in a big family of 6 girls and 2 boys, and I'm the third oldest in the family. I'll be 84 years old in, I don't know, a week or 2, I don't know.
2 weeks.
3 weeks?
No, 1 week.
1 week. 1 week. And I went to school there, and it was a big school, and I went to grade 3 there, up to grade 3. It was grade 1 and 2, and then we moved from there to our cottage, and then we made that our permanent home. And I went to school every day, except Saturday and Sunday, by taxi. And I had to go to a school which we called across the river. And it was a one-room classroom. And it was from grade 1 to 5. And I was in grade 4. And we were all in the same classroom. And we lived outside of Montreal.
In where?
In Laval. It was called Place Laval, and then it was changed to Laval West. And I lived there until I was 21. And then I moved from there and lived back in Montreal. And I lived there with 5 girls in a rented place. And then after that, I got married in 1959 to a man named John Robert Breckles, but he goes by Bob. And we lived in a basement apartment in Montreal. And then from there we moved to Ville-Saint-Laurent, and there I got pregnant and I had my first child, Brian John Breckles. And then from there we moved to Champigny, and that's where I had our second son, Robert James Breckles. And in 1978, we moved from Montreal to Toronto. My favorite memory from my childhood is we didn't have the things that they have today. So the biggest thing I can remember is that my father worked for United Theaters, and he had to deliver some film. So he said he could take us for a ride, but we had to go across, I think it was the Jacques Cartier Bridge, and in those days they charged you 25 cents and 25 cents for each person. And he didn't have the money for us to pay for us. So he only had the 25 cents to go there and the 25 cents to come back. So we got potato sacks, and we hid in potato sacks. And then once he got over the bridge, then he told us that we could come out. Because if they looked in the truck, it was a small truck, and they saw people, then he'd have to pay for us. But if we were in the potato sacks, they would just think it was potatoes and they'd let us go. So we thought that was really, really great. But oh boy, when you're all curled up in a potato sack, and I'm, just praying that my father hurries and gets over this bridge. And then we had to do the same coming back. And the other thing I can remember is, we didn't have money and games and everything. So we used to go out and play kick the can. And then our neighbors used to get annoyed at us because we'd be making too much noise. And they would, call our parents and tell them to bring us in the house because we were making too much noise. Yeah. Kick the can is that you'd put the empty can down. It'd be washed out. And, it would be all shiny. You'd take the wrappers off of it. And you'd put the can down. And then you had to kick it and see how far it goes. And then you'd all run for it to get it to kick it back. And you'd make lines coming back and forth. So that was our game. Not like they have today when they have iPads and phones and everything. We didn't have any of that stuff. So we had to make games like that to play. And the other thing was because there were so many of us in the family, we used to have little fights. But my father made a go-kart, like a racing car, all out of wood. And we lived near this hill. So we used to go down on this car that was made out of wood. And, it was nailed all together. And I went down and I went into this bush and I turned over and scraped all my legs. And I came up and I was crying and my mother had to get iodine then and that stung and I was screaming and she was putting the iodine on and I said, I can't go to school because I've got all these scratches on. And they said, you have to go to school, So I went to school and everybody was asking, what happened to you? I said, I went down the hill in my brother's car. His car. I said, yeah, my father made him a car out of wood. And I said I could drive it. And then my mother would come out and then my father would come and say, stop and get that water home, get that water home. And another thing was we had a coal stove. You cooked and heated by coal. So they had this coal bin outside the house, like it was covered over in wood and everything. It had a big lid on it. And we each had to take turns and going out different days to bring coal in because that's what heated the stove and that's what my mother cooked on and that's what heated the house. So it was a lot of fun growing up in a big family.
So how often did you have to go get the water? Was that like once a week?
About every 2 days because
really?
It was, eight children. Was
Chevette, was it?
yeah, Chevette. Yeah,
The black one?
yeah, the black one was.
But the kids ended up driving.
Yeah, they did. They did.
What else is new? The kids take everything, don't they? Don't we?
But he was teaching me how to drive. Of course, I lived out in the country, so he took me on this country road. And he said to me, okay, back up. And he had a brand new car. What was the name of it?
Meteor, I think.
It was blue. It was blue.
Yeah, it was blue.
And he said, okay, he said,
Tailbone.
you have to learn how to back up. So I said, right here? And he said, yeah. He said, go, turn and go towards that fence. I went bang right into the fence. Then we were going to my oldest brother's, I don't know, for supper or something. And he said, okay, park it right in their driveway. And I said, you sure right in? Yeah, go a little bit further. And all of a sudden I heard, scratch. There was a wire coming out of a bush. And
Out of the fence.
And it came.
Scratching
So I
all
was
the way
going
down.
in
And that
all
was
the way down.
All the way down the car. Oh no.
that was a brand new car.
Yes, that was a brand new car. We had to have it fixed.
But
Little
me
paint job.
keep my cool.
Oh,
Yeah, of course, yeah. You gotta.
Oh, yeah. Son of a bitch, you hit. Look what you did to the car. You already backed it into a fence, and now look what you've done now. I said, you told me to go there.
I wasn't gonna go. I was gonna park it on the street. No. But,
Kept his cool.
yeah.
Were we married then?
Yes, we were married then.
Was it a standard car?
I don't remember.
No, I
Don't
think it
remember.
was his first automatic car.
I don't remember.
Ah.
Yeah.
It was a Meteor.
I really got into trouble. But it was him. He was telling me to do it. So I was listening to him. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know the wire was there. Then he goes in the house and asks my brother, "Did you put the wire in the bush so she could get the car scratched?" He said, "What are you talking about?" They didn't even know there was a wire there. This is when we lived in Montreal, and they loved it when I bathed them and put baby powder on them and put their PJs on. And he used to come over and take them to his house. And he just loved the smell. Oh, he's crazy about Brian. He just loved Brian, you know. And he took Brian fishing a couple of times. Like they'd leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. And Brian was only 5, 6 years old. And he'd go for the whole day. And when they came home, Brian was exhausted. He was so tired. And he was out. But he was, you know, I used to put a lot of cream on him and make sure he wore a hat. Well, in the morning too, it was school, so he wore a hoodie. And he didn't like that. He wanted to wear a hat. Not Brian was like that, you know. Mother and
Yeah.
our minister's wife in my car, and we were driving back, and it's on these little windy roads, you know, in Quebec, and it was icy, and I had a small Pinto, little station wagon, and I started to slide, and I just slid, and I ended up into the ditch with the car, like backwards,
Okay.
And I thought, what am I going to do? You know? So he was following behind me, and he said he had Brian and Bobby with him, and I think there was somebody else. And so he says, "Oh, there goes your mother, there goes your mother, she's in the ditch." Well, the boys started crying because they got worried. Brian was crying his eyes out. My mother, you know, he was
He's an emotional.
really crying, eh? And Bobby was crying, you know, my mother. So they get there, and then the scoutmaster had come along too, and he came and he says, "Okay, Barb, what are you going to do for an encore now?" I said, "Get me out of here, get me out of here," you know. And the two boys were crying their eyes out. "What's the matter?" I thought he did something. Dad said, "You know, there goes your mom," and they didn't know, you know.
You're so mean, Grandpa.
They thought that they
that was
lost
a
me.
black ice
Yeah.
type situation.
Oh God.
It was
Poor
on a
guy.
curve.